Okay, let's face it. Comedy, for all that we know, is a highly subjective factor that gets blown off at the wayside in terms of debating what's funny or not nowadays. Like, you know how when you're scrolling down your social media timeline and the algorithm constantly tries to show you a compilation of clips on TikTok or something that goes with the title, "Laugh and you will die," and then you watch it and in the end you're like,
Dicks are so cute. Oh my gosh. When you hold on your hand and it starts twitching like it's nuzzling you.
Why are we still here?
And then you perk up and you're like, oh,
Just to suffer.
But hey, why waste time watching cringy clips that makes you want to lose faith in humanity when instead you could be watching a show that actually does have comedic moments while also being integrated with cute anime girls? Because as we all know, they are the one thing that helps us cope with all life's problems abound. Kanasaki Takayomi, for those unaware, is one of the leading anime directors of the past few years, and is also one of the rare people that knows how to get a viewer to laugh out loud on occasion, thanks in due to his wild facial expressions on how he portrays his characters, and the bombastic animation that largely carries the rest of his portfolio onward. With his most prolific shows being adaptations of the well-renowned isekai Konosuba, and the massively popular gacha game Princess Connect. Now, personally, I really like both of these shows, since they have managed to resonate with me in no such manner that other anime would, in terms of, just being funny. But of course, there needs to be a line to draw here somewhere, and that line is, which show is objectively better than the other? Now, in hindsight, it might be questionable to provide it as a main topic for this video, but whatever, it's my choice to make this, hence I get to do many different ways with how it's handled, so get over it! So what I'm getting at here is, I will be doing a breakdown on each show to see what certain aspects are handled better comparatively by the other, and to see which show that statistically gets to be the overall winner. Yeah, you heard me, this is gonna be a certified death battle between Konosuba and Pre-Connect. So without further ado, let's fucking go! Now, to start things off, the only way to introduce what we are facing off with is the story, and thus, it would be best to summarize what exactly they are and how they would stand out from each other. Let's begin with Konosuba. So basically, from the first minute or so, it begins with your run-of-the-mill otaku named Kazuma that gets run over by a truck while saving a local country girl, and which inevitably leads to his death. After that, he then soon encounters Aqua, who is also one of your male goddess type that sends our protagonist off to another world that is set in a fantasy realm, in which the main goal is to stop the Demon Lord. Now, truth be told, this is essentially just the premise for every generic isekai to ever grace the sun, but I digress. One of the reasons that everyone, including me, loves this show so much is that it always tends to play with the tropes and cliches, and as well as what to expect in an otherworldly fantasy. And what I meant by that is that this show in particular just takes all of that and chucks it out of the window like it's the devil's baby or some shit. Remember when I said that Kazuma died via truck kun? Yeah, it turns out he actually died of a neural shock due to him thinking he got ran over, when in actuality, it was just a random tractor passing by. Oh, and he just so happens to take the goddess with him because he thought she could be a valuable asset for his adventure. I wonder how that will turn out. And from that moment on, it all comes full circle, followed up by teaming up with Demolition's expert Megumin and the oh-so-chivalrous crusader known as Darkness. Thus, it all comes down to our main heroes as they struggle to keep up with money wages, fighting over-the-top villains, all wrapped up in forever engrossing situations full of disastrous, yet hilarious results. Now we move on to Princess Connect. So, in hindsight, there's not really a whole lot of plot going on in this. Instead, it carries much more of the setting that you would find in a typical slice of life. Now mind you, this is a gacha game adaptation after all, so while it does have an end goal in sight, or at least I think there is, there's not a whole lot to describe about what in this show is really all about. Instead, it just consists with our main cast just going out and about hunting monsters for food and seek out what other gourmet discoveries lie within that world, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if you ask me. Fortunately for the viewers that do find it so, it makes up for that flaw by segmenting the narrative onto the other side characters that are part of the game, whilst also providing a more hidden plot point within the circumstances our cast is in which it often occurs the more you progress watching. Like Konosuba, Princess Connect kinda follows the same formula, yet both the characters and setting they're in are in fact no more different from each other. And I think that gives an extra point to Princess Connect on that one, since the world building in it is surprisingly more creative than the former candidate, though that's mainly due to it poking fun at its tropes instead of just deconstructing them. So where does this generally stand? While both of these shows are relatively light in the narrative department, they do carry some other significant elements that makes the anime to what they are. Konosuba gives you a non-stop charade of ridiculous situations that our heroes put themselves in, yet the execution is always handled in the most absurd way possible that you just can't help but laugh at. Meanwhile, with Connect, you have a slice of life fantasy where the main plotline is just having plenty of fun with the activities you're doing, such as, having a meal with your mates and maybe have a few ounces of explosive animation there and then. We'll get back to that later. Overall, as difficult as it was for me to decide, I'm gonna go with Konosuba on this one, mainly due to its coherency of presenting a main cast as a bunch of incompetent adventurers while still engaging them in clever yet bizarre scenarios that just ends up getting a good chuckle out of someone, regardless. While as for Connects, only with an investment is essentially by, introducing a new cast of characters from the game to take their time in the spotlight on a weekly basis. Although, there is an underlying plot thread in the latter by which it does become more relevant the further you watch the show, so that at least implies that the writers are actually putting effort into it, despite the way they handle it as meandering at best. So, that point goes to Konosuba. Now, this one's gonna be a no-brainer for some of you guys. I don't really think I need to tell you who the guys from Konosuba are, simply because they have reached the peak as one of the most recognizable characters in anime. You have the lovable dickhead that is Kazuma, the useless crybaby goddess that is Aqua, the ever-so-wonderfully obsessed with explosions fanatic that is Megumin, and then there's Darkness, who's, So to summarize this, each and every one of these characters has their own unique sets of quirks and traits that pretty much perfects the formula of what would it be like to go on a role-playing adventure with a bunch of buffoons, and that also solidifies why everybody loves them. They're just so damn funny. Sure, morally they're not exactly good people, but whenever they interact with each other or the way they react to any kind of ideal situation makes up for an always entertaining watch. It's kinda hard to imagine someone else go up against that level of popularity, but while they may not reach that peak, the characters from Princess Connect aren't really too shabby either. In stark contrast, the main foreign heroes in this anime are like a way more competent version of what Konosuba's heroes are supposedly like. Just about everything about the cast is pretty much the exact opposite of the former's. Well, almost. Yet despite that, they still carry an amount of traits that makes them a likable bunch whatever the case is. Kokoro, to start off with, is quite reserved to an extent. But most of the time she is a very laid-back gal whose attitude to most situations are always presented in a calm and collected manner. Carol, on the other hand, is more like the tsundere type, yet whenever things get rough, she's always willing to help out her friends in need, even in circumstances where she just outright refuses to. Yuki is... well, how should I describe him? In terms of how he's represented it in the game it's based on, he's merely just to be served as the default self-insert avatar role as... well, like any other gacha game role. However, the way that he's acted out in the anime, per se, makes him come across as just the most adorable guy you'll ever meet. Seriously though, for most of the series runtime, every time he does something or makes any kind of a slight gesture, it just makes you want to pat him on the head like just the good boy that he is. That's actually genius now that I think about it. Why did no other anime studio have done that with their blank slates? Oh, is it because the writers want you to project yourselves onto them instead? Well, that's enough for not putting in the effort then. I want an actual main character, for God's sake! And finally, we have Pecorine, whose main ordeal is just... okay, you know the feeling you get whenever you're having a bad day, and then someone is there to make you feel better and want to appreciate the better things in life? That's a character in a nutshell. She's just so energetic and lively and really caring that much about her friends to the point I just want to caress everything for her immediately, and I will fight you if you disagree with that statement. And as mentioned before, it doesn't hurt either that whenever your favorite guild, or person for that matter, gets their chance in the spotlight, it really makes for an enlightening experience since it's practically wifeology 101 at this point, and I am all for that shit. Now, frankly, if this segment were to be expanded upon into their gaming counterparts, I'm pretty sure there'll be a whole lot more depth to what exactly these characters are, but unfortunately, it's only the anime version that'd be involved in the segue, and not even they were enough to counteract the sheer epiphany of the main Konosuba cast. Okay, so this one's gonna be in a more technical side of things, but here we go. When it comes to creating a certain atmosphere, there's always something you need to help provide that via the soundtrack, the visuals, or how a certain moment in a show is meant to convey a certain feeling. Case in point, while it may not look like much in hindsight, both Konosuba and Connect do have some pretty astounding visuals to boot. Just look at the water in it, it just looks so crisp and clean that if you compare that to a real-life counterpart, it's all... man, the ocean has not seen better days. Now, obviously, there is a lot of similarities between these two shows in those aspects. I mean, they're both handled by the same guy, after all. But of course, there's gonna be one that rules them out in that certain asset. First and foremost, Konosuba is by all means a comedy, which means a lot of the time the show will spend its investment on are the characters and how they deal with each occurring scenarios that ends up leading to a punchline. Yet one thing that I have a bit of a grudge with this is that it ends up having to sacrifice parts of the details that matters in the back end of things. Now here's what I mean. Have you ever witnessed a moment in which the main characters are basically doing nothing important at all? In the grand scheme of things. Like, was there ever a scenario in which the cast has been, given the chance to breathe, not to go any quests, and instead just chill out and hang out like normal people would usually do? Now, I might be misreading the room a bit, because I'm pretty sure there are moments like that, but most of the time, they just tend to get completely overshadowed by the more lol XD funny moments. I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, like, again, this is a comedy, but it's just kind of a bummer to not have these moments where our favorite quest dwellers or undwellers just take a backseat and reflect on their journey and the many things that they've done together throughout its duration. That sort of stuff really values your investment while watching, generally speaking, because when you're having the time of your life watching each character outright trying to overpower one another, but simultaneously you are also just watching people just trying to get by in this fantasy world. It's all about them vibes, man. You gotta get with the vibes. And personally, I think that's the one key aspect that Princess Connect excessively thrives in. Okay, just hear me out. While I can agree that Princess Connect is way more chill than its other counterpart, but here's the thing. One thing I really liked about this show is that its background art and key visuals by themselves sets way above Konosuba's in terms of production value. I mean, the way the entire setting and the looks and feels of Connect has a ton more originality compared to Konosuba's copy-pasted village setting. And do you recall when I said about characters taking a back seat and just having a swell time? Well, this show has tons of moments like that, and I generally think that helps severe a connection more of the audience as it does with your typical lol XD funny moments. Because whenever there's a vibe to chill to, it always feels rewarded, as when our main heroes are done with their quest, and then they just let themselves off having a well-cooked meal and watch over the horizons as they ponder their friendship for one another. And let me remind you that the Gourmet Guild's entire purpose is to look for things that will be served as food and just having a good time. What could not be more chill than that? And the best part about it is that when things do start to go south, you can really feel it as you're rooting for the characters to help save the day and that things will be alright. Yet you know that the times they spend together will not last forever. That is a very difficult thing to pull off tone-wise, especially when you're basing this off on a gacha game. A gacha game! It's actually not that bad once you play it though. So, what else can I say besides giving this point to Princess Connect? Okay, let's just cut right to the chase. The animations in both shows are downright fantastic, there is no denying it, with Konosuba's being a particular standout due to its character animation wailing it at your screen with its sheer blown full ridiculousness of how they look. And that really helps giving its charm that bit even more in its lol XD funny moments. And whenever there's a major action scene going on, the result is well explosive in the literal term. Like, when you look at just how flashy everything looks, it really helps the idea that, yep, this is a fantasy world and everyone has magical powers in it. Plus, even the movie has, in my opinion, one of the most stunning visual set pieces you'll ever see. If you were to compare that to the other isekai shows, that is. Now, let's see how Princess Connect can beat that. Oh? Well, there's barely competition at this point now, is there? So, now that we have collectively marked all the good points about each series, there is only one thing that matters in a general term of this showdown. Which series has been impacted the most into the anime consensus? Basically, it means which one's the more recognizable one. And so, the winner of this grand deal earns their victory to... Konosuba! Alright, let me explain why that's the case. You see, for a while now, there have been rarely any sort of anime that manages to carry the more humorous side of things. Or at least they try to. Like, we all know how much anime that tends to phrase the term comedy, yet in reality, it's been oversaturated with the same tropes and cliches and embarks on that sort of humor. Now, to be fair, this is mainly a large complaint on the harem/rom-com side of things, but the main point of it is that most comedy anime tend to rely on these sort of jokes, and it gets old really fast. Now, on the isekai side, it was still growing as a certain niche throughout the early 2010s, until now you will rarely find a season that doesn't even have a single isekai, and just like rom-coms, it usually relies on the same tropes and manners that are affiliated with its category as well. So, what exactly made Konosuba stand out from the rest? Well, nothing much really. So, like most isekai stories, the end goal of this series is to simply defeat the Demon Lord and then the world will be saved. If you were paying that much attention to the story segment that I covered at least 3 chapters ago, then you know that's not really the case. And that's pretty much how the show came to be as it is now, but not just because of the way it handles its tropes. If there's one thing I would have to describe this entire ordeal in a nutshell, it would have to be that it has the plot equivalent of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Because what you're essentially watching is just a bunch of incompetent adventurers who are always determined to screw each other over for their own self-needs. Yet, most of the time, it feels less egregious to see how it's played out and more entertaining to see what stupid shit that would come up with next, which is something to always look forward to. Princess Connect, on the other hand, doesn't have that, which is another reason as to why fewer people ever talk about it despite the fact that it's based on a method to induce players to spend in-game currency to receive a random virtual item. Don't get me wrong, I'm really grateful for Kanazaki to help bring both of these shows to life, but all in all, if there is one show in particular that I would guarantee he is well known for directing, it would be none other than Konosuba. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. In the end, this marks Konosuba as the overall winner. Now, to be frank, this is based solely on my opinion of how each show would be panned out against one another, so if you think that Princess Connect is a better show overall, then I won't bat an eye. In any case, thanks for watching, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you wish to see more. See you next time!